Hello everybody. Well, will you look at that? Welcome to Ubuntu 20.04.5 long-term service release, GNU Linux, kernel version 5.15.74.2, an unmodified Microsoft WSL2 compiled kernel for the 64-bit x86 Intel architecture. So there's still, awareness of hardware in your version of Linux. Linux has to be developed for each hardware architecture, which is one of the things that has slowed down its adoption because it had to be ported to all this creative new stuff coming out. The resurgence of the roughly RISC. I know it's not the reemergence of the RISC versus chip, CISC architecture wars, reduced instruction set versus complex instruction set, which split the Zilog and the 6502s from the 68000s and 286s, I guess, in those days. Anyway, ALL for all. This is a SBIN program I've written in order to edit a number of journals at once, and it does a little bit of Vim stuff ahead of time, making sure that I've committed and pushed and pulled the latest on each of these writing repos. And I've got my buffers filled now. I guess I can go blist, I think, BLS. Oh, :ls, I think is the command. There we go. And then it shows me my different buffers. I'm in my public journal. It gets published to my website. Then there's my personal journal. And then there's a couple other things I do and the .vimrc file. So one of my favorite things, I hit escape twice to get out of that, :blast. I could just do :bl. It would be the same thing. But I think doing the whole thing is a blast. And there's my vimrc. And it's not really super generalized yet. It's getting there. So what I'm going to do, my objective is to make sure my entire publishing environment gets moved over to this now, script installable Linux machine, right? So what I've been showing over and over, and before I put that on screen 2 is reserved for Jupyter, and screen 3 is reserved for Edge. Now, one thing is Jupyter may not load. Oh, good. I had already been into... Yeah, of course. Whenever I start one of these Linux terminals, it makes sure the Jupyter server is running on the background. And I can show you that. This, by the way, is a repo that I just published yesterday. Very important piece of code, especially for the field of SEO. The reason most people don't work this way is because it's hard for them to get the environment set up just so, right? So mikelev.in/blog is where it all gets published. So you can see my stuff from yesterday, including an embedded Microsoft video on one of the prior posts. I have to give this one a headline. It just does generic, but there's one that has an embedded YouTube video you can watch. It's funny. I choose gray a lot. For lack of the need for a color, it's easy to default to gray. And then the question is, what intensity of gray? And I start out with something close to a medium gray. I go a bit darker to have, the readability of a black background, but not super high contrast. It's actually easier on the eyes. Maybe a bit less readable for some, but you can see. Anyway, all this cool stuff. Stuff is getting really cool. And it's no more than me writing my daily journal. :B1 brings me to the first buffer. &J, I'm starting a new journal entry. I save it right away just out of habit, but it does leave me in insert mode, so I could just start typing. You see me doing little magical Vim stuff, and don't worry about that too much. It's going to get into your head. So, do you know imposter syndrome? It's the feeling that you're not actually qualified for the trust people have put in into you, put into you on some relationship. The feeling that you're faking it. Ever feel that? It's called Imposter Syndrome. I guess this is one of those videos you should watch on like 2x speed because I'm just thinking out loud. So, when you have imposter syndrome, sometimes you're really an imposter. I bet that's not what you thought I was going to say. Honestly, you'll never feel imposter syndrome, for a minute, if you are adept at Vim, if you're a good Vim user. I won't say master Vim for few master Vim. It's a lifetime endeavor, and you will get forever better in that time, as if a artist, musician, athlete, although they peak because of physical abilities at some point. So I always debate whether to put athlete in there, but there are such users of that physical equipment like martial arts. In which tools don't change much over a lifetime. Sure, they might get better or cheaper, but a violin is still a violin. That's not true for tech and web frameworks and languages. And APIs. I guess everyone who follows me now knows I'm talking about application program interfaces. I'll just put that in parentheses. Interfaces. API sounds a bit redundant. These are just interfaces. Everything's an interface. The standard model is an interface. So, long story. I'm not going to go into it. So, to fight imposter syndrome, learn Vim and practice Vim. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. They'll happen. What you do need to be aware of is that there is difficult to acquire initiation knowledge. Yes, like it's a club. Few old-timers really think they can communicate to you, the youth, the actual incredible value of Unix-like OSs of the type Bell Labs, What? I never remember the name of that little town. Bell Labs, New Jersey. Put together. Everyone credits Ken and Dennis, but at this point, it's important to point out that they unified a lot of good ideas that came from other people and put it in a viral meme OS, because virtualization and portability Unix got some slick tricks right, which is why the popularity of C today, the language that first implemented a type of virtualization, a type of compiler based. Well, if I'm saying hyphen based, I don't need the quotes. It is a type of compiler based virtualization that allowed portability between hardware, parentheses, platform. So, you're not talking about different instances of the same hardware architecture. This is portable between, hardware from different manufacturers for existence. And portability contributed to virility, mimeticness. What is the word? To spread. To spreading. Portability contributed to spreading, of course, right? Almost by definition. And some other cool concepts, like everything's a file and piping input and output, piping output to input of one program to the input of another, and how all of this is generally command line interface capable, is a native. The native user interface for the Unix philosophy capitalize it like it's a proper noun thing. The native user interface for the Unix philosophy is the command line, aka shell or terminal. And yes, sometimes even TTY for the teletype terminals of your, right? So it's very difficult to, appreciate how Unix was created many, many years ago. Created in 1970. And, we're in 2022. So that's 2022 minus 1970. And that's 52 years. That is how old I am. we're in 2022. So that's 52 years. I'm 52 years old too. So you can hardly blame me for not taking up Unix right away. It took a few years. Now, Unix alone was cool, but the free and open source software movement is even cooler. There's two main roots of tech, of modern tech. There's a lot of cross fertilization, but for the most part, before the boom, the Silicon Valley boom in the West Coast, it was all either Bell Labs or MIT. The former created Unix, and the later created Lisp. These are the two competing OS languages of the early days, whose, decisions still run through all our tech today. Unix promised plumbing of tech. Promised generic. Yeah, very utilitarian. And craftsman-like. It provides the opportunities to get better at the tools over time. It's the ability to internalize standard, in other words, static and unchanging tools into your body. When you learn a tool, you're creating a copy of it in your mind. You're mapping it. It becomes a part of you, and when the tool goes away, you have a very annoying phantom limb. Get it? Proprietary tools are terrible because when they go away or transform too much, long story there, yeah, you're screwed. FOSS, FOSS, FOSS. You can let that into your DNA with the confidence your descendants will be able to instantiate a running instance of your code. Get it? Running systems are about to become inherited human traits. Evolution beaches. It's happening right now, along with the rise of AI. They're not the same thing. Generic plumbing of tech can give rise to very useful machinery that is not actually intelligent. It's just following the script. So you must be comfortable on at least what can pose as generic Linux hardware. It's the standard now. It's going to be around for a while. It wasn't all Unix because Linux is where much of the modern both innovation and freedom, as in Libre, spirit has existed for a while. See, Unix got bogged down by proprietary intellectual property issues, while Linux did not. So, Linux won. Sorry, Unix, but it's time to learn systemd as a sort of alternative to web dev. Imposter syndrome sets in when you find yourself only a master of the dead tech. Recently, superseded, replaced by. Superseded sounds highfalutin, I'll go with that. Though, generally favor the simple language. Imposter syndrome sets in when you find yourself only a master of the dead tech recently superseded by the dazzling new thing that it seems like only kids understand. Bullshit. That's a forever cycle, and only an attribute of the particular platforms you've taken up so far. Some platforms don't go obsolete so fast. So get your code running on Linux generic hardware. Familiarize yourself with how on different hardware and cloud services. Code runs anywhere without designed in money-making vendor dependency. See? Linux, Python, Vim, and Git. Linux and Vim should be becoming apparent by now for anyone following the video. But it seems so difficult. Mike, you can't just jump into Vim. I say you can. DrinkMe Linux is my way to help people do just that. I'll set this environment up. Bottle it for anyone wishing to give it a try. And it comes with Jupyter Lab with a running instance of Jupyter Lab on http://localhost:8888 built in to help with the transition to Python. Always on screen number 2 for me, because it's that important. It's your gateway to Linux and all things Linux making sense to you without seeing a Linux desktop at all. Linux is not about desktops. Linux is about running code. Another great controversial split. Controversy controversial topic, System D, is well, do I even? Yeah, I could make this video go on forever. I clearly want to talk about, the Python-ish, the Python stuff of Jupyter Lab and take this to the next level, create a bunch of different repos, which I'll have in a nice, clear way. I'm going to clear my personal repos out so that when I go that one directory level up, it's not overwhelming to look at, and it's just the stuff you can follow along with. So that'll be a bit challenging because I do use this for work. It's my real everyday work environment, which is a big part of what makes so much of this so genuine. So I'll be making little adjustments, and of course you can follow along by going to my blog, mikelev.in/blog. Thanks for joining me. Hope to talk to you again soon. Don't forget to subscribe.